Humanity had always looked up to the stars, dreaming of what lay beyond. But when the Psylocke Empire made its first move, Earth was not ready. The Psylocke were a force to be reckoned with, massive ships, advanced technology, and a ruthless attitude toward those they deemed weak. They had conquered countless planets and species across the galaxy, and now they had set their sights on Earth. The Psylocke sent a delegation to Earth with one goal: to demand humanity's submission. They claimed to come in peace, but everyone knew better. Their ships hovered above the Earth's atmosphere, casting shadows that covered entire cities. They sent a message, loud and clear, across every communication network. We are the Psylocke. You are weak. Accept our terms or face destruction. In response, Earth's leaders called an emergency summit. The world's greatest minds gathered, unsure of how to face such a terrifying force. A human diplomat named Aiden, relatively new to international politics, stood quietly at the back of the room. He wasn't like the others. He didn't speak softly or follow the formalities expected of him. Aiden had spent his life studying history, particularly stories of humanity's past battles for survival. His gut told him that Earth wasn't going to beg for mercy or cower in fear. "We can't negotiate with them," Aiden spoke up, his voice steady. "They think we're weak because we don't ask for permission, but we don't have to follow their rules. Humanity doesn't ask for permission to exist. We take what's ours." The room fell silent. The seasoned diplomats and generals exchanged uneasy glances. Was this a foolish idea, or was it exactly what they needed? Aiden's words echoed in their minds, and he could see it in their eyes, the spark of something bold. Without waiting for approval, Aiden did something no one expected. He took to the world's broadcast systems and broadcasted a single message across every channel. "We don't ask for permission. We are humans, and we will not bow to anyone. The Psylocke can either leave, or we will force them to understand why humanity is not to be underestimated." The Psylocke, watching from their ships, reacted swiftly. Their leaders were furious. They had underestimated humanity's spirit, thinking the people of Earth would be quick to surrender. But Aiden's challenge had been a call to arms for every human on the planet. His message wasn't just a declaration. It was a rallying cry. Across the world, people began to prepare. They didn't wait for permission from their governments. They began working together to defend their homes. Ordinary people, from farmers to engineers to scientists, all began to gather. They weren't soldiers, but they would be. The Psylocke envoy, shocked by the response, began to realize something they had missed. Humanity wasn't like the others they had conquered, and they were about to learn a hard lesson. Humans don't ask for permission. The Psylocke were used to getting what they wanted. They had conquered planet after planet, each species cowering before them, afraid to fight back. But what they didn't expect was a human response like this. The Psylocke had sent their envoy to Earth expecting a quick surrender, but instead they found themselves facing the defiant humanity. Back on Earth, Aiden's message had sparked something inside people. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about dignity. The idea that humans didn't need permission to stand tall, to fight for their right to exist, spread like wildfire. People from every corner of the globe united under one cause. They would not be dominated. The world's leaders, initially hesitant and divided, saw the response from their people and realized something. It was time to act. Aiden had ignited the spark, but now humanity needed to show the Psylocke what they were up against. Earth's military forces scrambled to defend the planet. They knew they couldn't match the Psylocke in terms of firepower or technology, but what they lacked in advanced weaponry, they made up for in ingenuity. Scientists, engineers, and military strategists worked day and night, creating new weapons and defensive strategies. No one asked for permission. They simply got to work. Meanwhile, the Psylocke envoy remained in orbit, growing impatient. They had expected to be welcomed as conquerors. Instead, they found humanity preparing for war. They sent a message, threatening to obliterate entire cities unless Earth agreed to their terms. But Earth's answer was clear: no negotiation. The Tylocs had made a critical mistake. They underestimated the human spirit. While their ships were powerful, they were also slow and predictable. Humans, on the other hand, were unpredictable and relentless. They didn't follow the rules. They made their own. Aiden was called back to the International Summit to advise on the next step. As he stood before the world's leaders, he could see the determination in their eyes. The time for talking was over. The Tylocs would learn the hard way that humans didn't wait for permission to act. "We'll fight," Aiden said, his voice steady. "We'll fight not because we're afraid of them, but because we are human. And no one, not even the Tylocs, can tell us what to do. We don't ask for permission. We take what we want." The leaders nodded in agreement. The world had come together, not out of fear, but out of pride. The battle was on. They weren't going to beg for their lives. They were going to show the Tylocs that Earth was not a prize to be taken. The Tylocs envoy, watching from orbit, felt a surge of anger. This wasn't supposed to happen. But they had already made the mistake of underestimating humanity. Now they would face the consequences. Humans weren't going to ask for permission. They were going to take a stand, no matter what it took. The tension in the air was thick as Earth's forces readied themselves for the inevitable Tylocs attack. The Tylocs had underestimated humanity before, but now they were about to learn just how dangerous humans could be when pushed too far. The people of Earth had come together, not out of fear, but out of sheer willpower. They would not kneel. The first wave of Tyloc ships entered Earth's orbit, their massive shapes casting shadows over the planet. Their weapons were powerful, their ships nearly indestructible, and they came with the full intention of crushing any resistance. Their plan was simple: intimidate humanity into submission, then wipe out any remaining threats. They didn't even believe the humans could put up a real fight. But what the Tylocs didn't know was that humanity had a secret, one that no one could have predicted. While Earth had no chance of matching the Tylocs in raw strength, they had something far more dangerous: ingenuity. In secret, scientists and engineers had been working tirelessly to develop a new weapon, one that wasn't just about brute force, but about turning the tide of battle with a simple idea. The weapon was an experimental device that could manipulate gravitational fields. It wasn't the kind of weapon that Tylocs had ever seen. It didn't rely on lasers or explosions. Instead, it used Earth's natural resources in a way that no one thought possible. Aiden had been kept in the dark about the specifics of this weapon until now. As the human fleet gathered to face the Tylocs, he was briefed about the new technology. The gravity manipulator, as they called it, was capable of creating localized gravitational fields strong enough to pull entire ships off course. This weapon would be the game changer. In a hidden underground facility, the final touches were being put on the gravity weapon. As Aiden looked over the plans, his heart raced. He had seen the power of the Tyloc ships, but this could give humanity a fighting chance. With the weapon ready, it was time for Earth's military to act. The first battle began as expected. The Tyloc ships launched a heavy assault, targeting Earth's largest space stations. The human fleet, smaller but highly maneuverable, tried to hold its ground. For the first few hours, it seemed like the Tylocs would overwhelm the humans. The battle seemed lost. Then, at the crucial moment, Earth's fleet activated the gravity manipulator. The effects were immediate and stunning. A massive Tyloc destroyer, previously untouchable, was suddenly yanked off course, tumbling into the path of another Tyloc ship. The two ships collided, causing an explosion that rattled the entire fleet. The humans had done it. The Tylocs were thrown into chaos. It wasn't a perfect victory, but it was enough to turn the tide. The human fleet, emboldened by the success of the gravity weapon, pushed forward with renewed confidence. They had shown the Tylocs that they were not just defenders. They were fighters who could think outside the box, who could use their creativity to level the playing field. The Psylocks, now facing their first real defeat, scrambled to adapt. They had never seen anything like this before. The humans, on the other hand, had only just begun. Their victory was a message to the Psylocks. Humanity would not wait for permission to defend itself. They would fight with everything they had, using whatever it took. And no one, not even the Psylocks, could stop them. The first victory was just the beginning. The Psylocks were shaken, but they weren't finished. They quickly regrouped, sending reinforcements and preparing for a much larger, more brutal assault. This time, they wouldn't underestimate the humans. They would crush them completely. But the humans weren't backing down. Instead, they were getting stronger, their resolve harder than ever. Aiden watched as Earth's fleet gathered. The gravity weapon had been a success, but the Psylocks were still a force to be reckoned with. Humanity needed more than just one trick up its sleeve. They needed strategy. They needed unity. In the following days, Earth's military leaders worked together like never before. They combined their knowledge of the Psylocks' tactics with their own human creativity. Aiden was in the thick of it, making sure that Earth's forces didn't just fight back. They fought smart. They couldn't afford to match the Psylocks ship for ship. Instead, they needed to use their numbers, their agility, and their adaptability. The day of the second battle came, and it was unlike anything anyone had expected. The Psylocks sent wave after wave of their massive ships, their weapons ready to obliterate anything in their path. But this time, the humans were ready. As the Psylocks advanced, Earth's fleet moved into position, using the asteroid belt as cover. The Psylocks didn't expect this. They had never fought anyone who didn't follow the rules. The human fleet was small and scattered, using the environment around them to launch surprise attacks. Every ship was a part of a larger plan, carefully coordinated to strike at the Psylocks from multiple directions at once. It was chaos. Explosions rang out as human ships darted in and out of the asteroid field, using their smaller size and speed to avoid the Psylocks' massive weapons. The humans didn't rely on brute force. They relied on their ability to think and adapt on the fly. And it worked. For the first time in the war, the Psylocks were forced to retreat, their ships unable to catch the humans in the maze of asteroids. But the Psylocks were not ones to give up easily. Their pride was wounded, and they quickly sent in their flagship, the Venerator, a massive battle cruiser that could take on entire fleets. The Venerator was the crown jewel of the Psylocks navy, and they sent it in with the intention of ending the battle in one final blow. The humans didn't flinch. They had prepared for this. Aiden gave the order to activate the gravity manipulator again. But this time, it was different. This time, they had a new plan. They aimed the weapon directly at the Venerator. As the human ships moved into position, the Venerator fired its devastating weapons, obliterating everything in its path. But just as the Venerator prepared for the final blow, the gravity weapon kicked in. The Venerator was pulled off course, its massive hull spinning wildly through space. It collided with another Psylocks ship, sending them both into a deadly spiral. The human fleet wasted no time. They moved in quickly, finishing what had already been started. The Psylocks flagship was destroyed, and with it, the Psylocks' sense of invincibility. The humans had done the impossible. They had not only survived, but they had made a statement. The Psylocks now knew what they were dealing with, a species that didn't ask for permission to fight back. And they were just getting started. The battle was far from over, but humanity had proven that they wouldn't back down. They would fight, and they would win. The stars would be their battleground, and they would show the galaxy just what humans were capable of. The first victory was just the beginning. The Psylocks were shaken, but they weren't finished. They quickly regrouped, sending reinforcements and preparing for a much larger, more brutal assault. This time, they wouldn't underestimate the humans. They would crush them completely. But the humans weren't backing down. Instead, they were getting stronger, their resolve harder than ever. Aiden watched as Earth's fleet gathered. The gravity weapon had been a success, but the Psylocks were still a force to be reckoned with. Humanity needed more than just one trick up its sleeve. They needed strategy. They needed unity. In the following days, Earth's military leaders worked together like never before. They combined their knowledge of the Psylocks' tactics with their own human creativity. Aiden was in the thick of it, making sure that Earth's forces didn't just fight back. They fought smart. They couldn't afford to match the Psylocks ship for ship. Instead, they needed to use their numbers, their agility, and their adaptability. The day of the second battle came, and it was unlike anything anyone had expected. The Psylocks sent wave after wave of their massive ships, their weapons ready to obliterate anything in their path. But this time, the humans were ready. As the Psylocks advanced, Earth's fleet moved into position, using the asteroid belt as cover. The Psylocks didn't expect this. They had never fought anyone who didn't follow the rules. The human fleet was small and scattered, using the environment around them to launch surprise attacks. Every ship was a part of a larger plan, carefully coordinated to strike at the Psylocks from multiple directions at once. It was chaos. Explosions rang out as human ships darted in and out of the asteroid field, using their smaller size and speed to avoid the Psylocks' massive weapons. The humans didn't rely on brute force. They relied on their ability to think and adapt on the fly. And it worked. For the first time in the war, the Psylocks were forced to retreat, their ships unable to catch the humans in the maze of asteroids. But the Psylocks were not ones to give up easily. Their pride was wounded, and they quickly sent in their flagship, the Venerator, a massive battle cruiser that could take on entire fleets. The Venerator was the crown jewel of the Psylocks Navy, and they sent it in with the intention of ending the battle in one final blow. The humans didn't flinch. They had prepared for this. Aiden gave the order to activate the gravity manipulator again. But this time, it was different. This time, they had a new plan. They aimed the weapon directly at the Venerator. As the human ships moved into position, the Venerator fired its devastating weapons, obliterating everything in its path. But just as the Venerator prepared for the final blow, the gravity weapon kicked in. The Venerator was pulled off course, its massive hull spinning wildly through space. It collided with another Psylocks ship, sending them both into a deadly spiral. The human fleet wasted no time. They moved in quickly, finishing what had already been started. The Psylocks flagship was destroyed, and with it, the Psylocks' sense of invincibility. The humans had done the impossible. They had not only survived, but they had made a statement. The Psylocks now knew what they were dealing with, a species that didn't ask for permission to fight back. And they were just getting started. The battle was far from over, but humanity had proven that they wouldn't back down. They would fight, and they would win. The stars would be their battleground, and they would show the galaxy just what humans were capable of. The war had been long and brutal, but humanity had taken the fight to the heart of the Psylocks Empire. With the help of their unexpected allies, the defected Psylocks soldiers, Earth's forces now had vital intelligence on the enemy's most dangerous weapon, a massive installation on Psylocks Prime, the homeworld of the Psylocks. The facility was heavily guarded, surrounded by layers of defense and countless ships. If humanity could take it down, the Psylocks would be left vulnerable. The plan was risky. The Psylocks had always relied on their overwhelming strength to crush anyone who opposed them. But now, with the knowledge the defectors provided, humanity had the element of surprise. Aiden, who had become a symbol of human resolve, knew that this was the moment. They had a chance to end the war once and for all, but only if they acted quickly. The human fleet, now stronger and more united than ever, prepared for the mission. They would need to slip past the Psylocks' defenses without being detected and destroy the facility before the Psylocks could retaliate. Earth's military had never undertaken such a dangerous operation, but they had no choice. Failure was not an option. Aiden stood in the command center of Earth's flagship, watching as the fleet assembled. His mind raced, But his resolve was steady. They had been outmatched before, yet here they were, on the verge of a victory that no one thought possible. It was a humbling thought, but also empowering. They had fought, not because they were stronger, but because they refused to be controlled. Everyone knows their role, Aiden said, turning to his crew. This is it. We strike now. No hesitation, no mercy. For Earth. The fleet launched from Earth's orbit, heading toward Scilox Prime. They moved in silence, their ships blending with the darkness of space. The defectors had provided the coordinates for a hidden route through the Scilox's defensive perimeter. If they followed it precisely, they might avoid the bulk of the Scilox fleet, but it wouldn't be easy. The Tylox were waiting, watching for any signs of attack. As they approached the enemy world, a warning flashed across the screen. The Tylox had detected their presence. Alarms blared as Tylox ships began to emerge from the shadows, blocking their path. A massive battle loomed, and the humans knew they had no time to waste. The fleet split into smaller groups, each tasked with disabling different parts of the defense system. The fight was intense. Scilox ships fired relentlessly, but the human fleet fought back with everything they had. The smaller human ships darted in and out of the Scilox defenses, dodging blasts and returning fire. The Tylox had always been confident in their dominance, but now they were facing a humanity that would not be intimidated. Earth's fleet moved with precision, hitting the Tylox where they were weakest. As the battle raged, Aiden's ship broke through the last line of defense. They had made it. The Tylox facility on Scilox Prime loomed ahead, a fortress that seemed impenetrable. The defectors' information had been right. The facility was heavily guarded, but there was one weakness, an unprotected entrance at the rear of the facility. Aiden ordered the fleet to focus their firepower on the defenses, creating an opening. The final strike was about to begin. Humanity had pushed past the Scilox's best efforts, and now they stood on the brink of victory. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about proving to the Tylox and the galaxy that humans didn't ask for permission. They took what was theirs, and this time they were taking back their future. The battle above Scilox Prime raged on, and the once proud Scilox were on the defensive. Their forces, while massive, were not enough to stop the relentless human fleet. With every passing hour, the humans pushed deeper into enemy territory. The mission was clear: destroy the Scilox facility at all costs and cripple their empire. But there was something more at stake now. As the humans drew closer to their goal, they uncovered a shocking truth that would change everything. As Aiden's fleet advanced, they began to get closer to the heart of the Scilox's operations. The Tylox had always seen themselves as superior, more advanced, more powerful. But as Earth's forces neared the central command of the Scilox military, they discovered an ancient library hidden deep within the heart of Scilox Prime. The library was full of knowledge, not just about Scilox history, but about the galaxy itself. It was a treasure trove of data, records of past civilizations, forgotten technologies, and secrets long buried. Aiden, along with a small team of experts, was sent to investigate. They breached the library, careful not to trigger any alarms. What they found inside was more than just information. It was a revelation. The Tylox had once been a great civilization, but they had lost their way centuries ago. They had become obsessed with control, with the belief that strength and fear were the only ways to maintain power. But their history, their true history, painted a different picture. The Tylox were not always conquerors. They were once explorers, travelers of the stars who sought knowledge and growth. It was only after they encountered a series of setbacks and failures that they turned to tyranny and subjugation, believing that domination was the only path to survival. In the records, they discovered something even more stunning: that Scilox Empire had once been allies with humanity's ancient ancestors, long before the rise of Earth's modern civilization. The two species had shared knowledge and technology, but over time, the Scilox had abandoned this alliance, choosing instead to conquer weaker species and hoard power. It was then that humanity was left behind, and the alliance was forgotten. Aiden stood in the center of the ancient library, staring at the records in disbelief. The Tylocs were not invincible. They were not the supreme beings they had always claimed to be. They had fallen from grace, just as humanity had once risen from the ashes of its own struggles. The realization hit Aiden hard. Humanity had always viewed the Tylocs as a threat, as a superior species bent on domination. But in reality, the Tylocs were a species that had lost its way. They were driven by fear, not strength, and their attempts to control the galaxy were simply a result of their own weakness. Is it possible? Aiden muttered to himself. Could we have been allies once? The more they discovered about the Tylocs, the clearer it became. The Tylocs weren't just invaders. They were victims of their own choices. They had fallen into the trap of their own pride and power. And now, humanity had the chance to break that cycle. Armed with this new knowledge, Aiden returned to the fleet, determined to finish what they had started. But this time, they weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for a chance to rewrite the future of the galaxy. A future where humanity and the Tylocs could stand together as equals, not as enemies. The fight was far from over, but now, humanity had a new understanding. They were not just defending Earth, they were showing the galaxy that strength didn't come from domination. True strength came from unity, from the courage to change, and from the willingness to choose a different path. Humanity had revealed the truth. They didn't need permission to fight for what was right. And with this new understanding, they would fight harder than ever before. The Tylocs had underestimated them, but they had also underestimated themselves. The battle for the galaxy was only just beginning. As humanity's forces prepared for the final assault on Tylocs Prime, something unexpected began to unfold within the Tylocs ranks. The revelations from the ancient library had shaken not only Aiden and his crew, but also the defected Tylocs soldiers who had joined humanity's side. The truth about their empire, their lost history, and the mistakes they had made was like a heavy burden weighing on them. The once unstoppable Tylocs were now divided. For the first time in centuries, cracks began to show in their once unified front. The defectors who had once fought for the Tylocs were now struggling with their own sense of guilt and doubt. They had helped Earth's forces uncover the truth, but now they were torn. Their loyalty to their empire and to their people had been replaced by a growing desire to change. Not all Tylocs, however, were willing to accept this truth. The high-ranking officials of the empire, those who had long held power, were furious. They saw the defectors as traitors, as weaklings who had abandoned their empire's proud legacy. To them, this was not a time for reflection. It was a time for retaliation. They saw no room for peace or change, only domination. Inside the Tylocs command center, a fierce debate broke out among their leaders. Some of the military officials wanted to negotiate with the humans, realizing that continuing the war might only lead to their ultimate destruction. They could see that the humans were resilient and resourceful, qualities that were not easily defeated. These leaders, weary from the endless cycle of war, believed that peace was the only way to save what was left of their empire. But the majority of the Tylocs military leaders refused to give in. They argued that admitting defeat would be the ultimate humiliation. To them, surrendering was not an option. They were ex-Tylocs, and the idea of asking for mercy or even offering peace was unthinkable. Peace. One high-ranking officer shouted, "That's what the weak ask for. We will show them why we are the masters of this galaxy." A war was beginning to unfold inside the Tylocs ranks, one that would determine the future of their people. While the humans prepared for their final strike on the Tylocs capital, the empire itself was on the verge of civil war. Some of the Tylocs were beginning to question everything they had fought for. The dream of an unyielding, dominant empire was no longer a clear path to victory. It was a hollow, destructive idea that had nearly ruined them. Aiden, watching the unfolding chaos from the safety of Earth's flagship, knew the timing was critical. The Tylocs were distracted, but they were also growing dangerous. The infighting within their ranks might create an opening, but it could also make the situation even more volatile. Humanity's forces could strike at any moment, but Aiden knew that the Tylocs leaders had one last card to play: their desperation. It wasn't just about fighting anymore. It was about what came next. Would the Tylocs, after everything, choose to embrace change and find a new way forward, or would they continue down their destructive path? Humanity had already made its choice. They had chosen to fight for a future, not just for themselves, but for everyone. Aiden addressed his crew, his voice full of determination. "We've fought long enough. Now we show the galaxy that peace is possible, but only if we stand strong." The final stage of the battle was approaching. The Tylocs might be divided, but humanity was united. They had proven that they would never ask for permission to shape their own future. And now they would show the Tylocs the true power of choice, both in battle and in peace. The final battle was upon them. The human fleet, battle-worn but stronger than ever, had pushed forward and now stood at the gates of Tylocs Prime. The Tylocs Empire, though fractured, still held a terrifying grip on the galaxy. But now, Earth's forces were no longer fighting just for survival. They were fighting for the future, for the hope of peace, and for the chance to rewrite the wrongs of the past. Aiden stood at the front of Earth's flagship, staring at the vast expanse of the Tylocs Prime looming ahead. The air was thick with tension. Their plan was simple: strike at the heart of the Tylocs capital and cripple their leadership once and for all. But there was a problem. The Tylocs were not defeated yet. Their military might was still formidable, even if their unity had cracked. But Earth had something that Tylocs could not see coming: unity in purpose. Humanity had come together in a way the galaxy had never seen. Different nations, different backgrounds, different cultures. Every human had rallied together to face this one common enemy. And that unity made them stronger than any weapon the Tylocs had. As the human fleet moved into position, the Tylocs sent their remaining warships into the fray. Their ships were massive and heavily armed, but they lacked the strategy and innovation that had made humans so dangerous. Earth's ships were faster, more agile, and more unpredictable. The Tylocs tried to form their usual formation, but the humans tore through it like a storm. Aiden watched the battlefield unfold. The Tylocs were fighting harder now, throwing everything they had left at Earth's forces. But the humans adapted quickly, using their smaller, more nimble ships to outmaneuver the Tylocs' massive fleets. It wasn't just a battle of firepower anymore. It was a battle of wit, and the humans had the upper hand. In the chaos of the battle, Aiden's flagship broke through the final line of defense. They had made it to the heart of the Tylocs capital. The massive facility housing the Tylocs leadership stood before them, its towering structure surrounded by a series of shields and defenses. But this time, humanity had the advantage. With the intelligence the defected Tylocs soldiers had provided, they knew exactly how to bypass the shields and enter the facility. As Aiden's team prepared to board the Tylocs capital, the Tylocs commanders began to realize their position was hopeless. The last remnants of their empire were crumbling, and they knew that if they did not act quickly, they would lose everything. On board the Tylocs command center, their leader, the Grand Marshal, made a desperate decision. Instead of negotiating, he ordered the final defense protocol, a last-ditch effort to destroy everything: their people, their empire, and their enemies. It was a last act of defiance, a final attempt to show the galaxy that the Tylocs were still in control. But the humans were ready. Aiden and his team infiltrated the central command center, fighting their way through the remaining Tylocs forces. The battle was fierce, but the humans were relentless. With one final push, they reached the heart of the facility and disabled the self-destruct protocol. The Tylocs Empire, shattered by internal conflict and external pressure, was finally brought to its knees. The battle was won. Humanity had proven their strength not through destruction, but through their ability to adapt, to think, and to stand united. As the human fleet stood victorious over the remains of the Psylocke's capital, Aiden looked out at the destruction. The battle had been hard, and the cost had been high. But humanity had shown the galaxy that they were not a species to be underestimated. They didn't ask for permission. They took their future into their own hands. The Psylocke's empire had fallen, and the galaxy would never be the same. The dust had settled. The stars above the Psylocke's prime were quiet, their once constant shine now dimmed by the wreckage left behind after the battle. The Psylocke's empire, once the dominant force in the galaxy, was no more. Earth's forces had done what no one thought possible. They had taken down a galaxy-spanning empire, and in doing so, had rewritten history. As the human fleet hovered over the ruins of the Psylocke's capital, Aiden stood at the helm of Earth's flagship, staring out at the destruction. The battle had been brutal, and countless lives had been lost. Yet, in the silence that followed, a sense of something greater than victory settled over him. Humanity had fought not just for survival, but for a future, one where they would no longer be controlled or dictated to by others. It was a hard-won peace, but it was a peace that humanity had earned. Around him, the atmosphere was filled with a mixture of relief, grief, and pride. The fleet's crew, soldiers, and leaders had sacrificed so much, but they had shown the galaxy something undeniable. Humans didn't ask for permission. They carved their own path, even in the face of the most overwhelming odds. The defected Psylocke soldiers, once enemies, stood alongside humans now. They, too, had witnessed the power of human resilience and creativity. They were not conquerors like their former comrades. Instead, they were survivors, people who had made the choice to break free from the cycle of violence that had defined their species. Aiden knew that they, too, would play a crucial role in rebuilding the galaxy. In the days following the fall of Psylocke's prime, Earth's leaders began the delicate task of rebuilding, not just their world, but the relationships they had once shared with other species. The war had created divisions, but the humans were determined to make amends, to forge new alliances based on respect and mutual growth. They had proven that they could stand their ground. But now it was time to prove that they could be trusted partners in the vast galaxy that lay before them. Aiden knew that this was just the beginning. The Psylocks were no longer a threat, but there were still countless unknowns in the galaxy. New challenges, new species, and new conflicts awaited, but he was no longer afraid. Humanity had proven that they could overcome anything. They had faced the most powerful empire in the galaxy and come out victorious. Now they would face whatever came next as a united species, determined to make their mark on the stars. As the human fleet set a course for the stars, Aiden turned to his crew. They had won, but the future was still unwritten. It was theirs to shape, theirs to decide. The message they had sent to the galaxy was clear. Humanity would never ask for permission. They would continue to explore, to grow, and to fight for their place in the universe. With the Psylocks defeated, the legacy of humanity had begun. It was a legacy of courage, of strength, and most of all, of the unshakable belief that humanity's future was their own to shape. The galaxy had been mourned. The humans had arrived, and they would not be stopped.